Welcome to Chapter 16 and Monopolistic Competition. Let's go through the chapter notes together. Thanks for joining me. Here we go. First of all, it's important to keep in mind that we're going to look at monopolistic competition in this chapter. The idea of kind of a combination of monopoly and perfectly competitive markets. How do we differentiate between those other two? And also, how are prices and profits determined? We also look at the trade-offs between lower prices and greater product diversity, and how advertising and brand names really does have a difference. Now, if you look at this model, I always tell students to think about it in terms of two types of products that we see regularly: cars and candy bars. Cars and candy bars really are a definer of monopolistic competition. They are products that are very similar in terms of the type of satisfaction they bring to consumers, but very different in that they are products that are very tailored. They're very tailored to specific audiences and targeted for those audiences, and tailored to specific tastes and preferences, that shifting of demand, as we've talked about in terms of the T in merit, what shifts demand. And so whether you're looking at a Nestle Crunch bar or whether you're looking at a BMW, the idea is the same in that there is some market power there. There's only one Nestle Crunch bar that's out there. There's only a 100 grand, and boy, are they delicious. And there's really not a whole lot like it. Yeah, you could substitute a Baby Ruth or something like that. But the idea is it is a unique product. And so in that, there is some market power. But they are competitive in that they're competing with a lot of other candy bars that are out there, just like the BMW is competing with a lot of other cars that are out there as well. And that's what we're looking at in this market of monopolistic competition. So there are additional resources at the end of chapter notes. I also included them here at the beginning because I think they're worth noting, whether it's ACDC Econ or Khan Academy, Jason Welker, Stephen Reff, whatever the case may be. I think you'll find some of these additional resources really helpful. And if you click on the box that you see here, you'll be taken to there's a link that'll take you to that resource in YouTube. So please do check it out, or on the internet, and you will find them helpful. Khan Academy even has some practice questions for you to use there. I think you'll find those resources definitely marginally beneficial. All right, let's look at monopolistic competition, this imperfectly competitive category. We've talked about perfect competition. We've talked about pure monopolies. Now we're looking at monopolistic competition. This idea that we have a large number of sellers, but their products are very different. They vary by style. They vary by location. A dry cleaners that's close to my home, and they vary by quality. Do I really want a high-end product, or I'm looking for a no-ad brand type of thing, where it's really focused on the product itself and not on the selling point, the salesy marketing side of things. There is some control over price in terms of what you see here, and also very low barriers to entry and exit. Very easy for firms to leave and enter the marketplace. One of the things I like to tell students in thinking about this is when we have open lunch, the idea here is you can go anywhere within reason and get something to eat. You have a lot of variety. You can get a sandwich. You can go to Giant for the salad bar, or at least you could. You can go to Flippin' Pizza. You can go to Starbucks and grab a latte. You can go to Chopped and get a salad. I can go over to that Chinese place and get a really good General Tso's chicken. I can go to Balducci's and get something custom made. There are a lot of options, and I can get to those reasonably successfully and get home, and get back to school in time for fifth period. So you have some reasonableness to the location aspect, but there's only so many places we can go. We can't go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We probably can't get to the Pancake House on 355 in time and get back in time for fifth period. So there are some limitations to that. So that does make it a bit competitive in that marketplace. So there's only so many places that are within that reach that actually can express some market power in selling to people that are trying to get back in time for lunch to be over. And so that's the monopoly portion. There's only so many places in that vicinity. But there are a lot of places that vary quite drastically in terms of the different types of companies and food that is offered there. And that's what we see in monopolistic competition. A lot of sellers, but very differentiated in terms of the products and the offerings that are there. And so how do they compete in this marketplace? They do it through what's called non-price competition, the idea of advertising, among other things that we'll talk about later. But the idea here is that they can compete with those others because they're really appealing to a specific aspect of demand. That is probably more inelastic than elastic in terms of a product that I really want to have, or that I really want to buy, or that I really want to eat. So some examples of this would be sandwich places, as we've mentioned, with the lunch factor, the open lunch. There's also dry cleaners, hairdressers. You've got bars and nightclubs, shoe repair outlets, and many taxi and taxi companies like Uber and Lyft that we see today. These are all examples of monopolistic competition because there's a variety of resources that are out there, but they are differentiated in that they're not all the same. They are different in terms of the aspects, and they exercise a little bit of market power in terms of the roles that they play there, and that is significant. Let's look at the monopoly and competition factors in terms of what we see here. The idea of it being monopolistic is some qualities that we see from monopolies. There is some price control that we have here. So there is some market power to that in a differentiated product that we would see there. So demand is going to be greater than marginal revenue. We're going to see that fall off, very similar to a monopoly graph. You would see the monopolistic competition companies in that regard. We would also see a lot of advertising. You wouldn't see that as much with a monopoly that is exercising market power. They don't need to. But in this place, you would have some tendency to do more advertising there in terms of getting your product out there. It's definitely not efficient. You are not producing at minimum price meets minimum ATC, what we would call productive efficiency. You would also not be producing at price equals marginal cost or allocative efficiency. So that is very similar to monopolies, and they're not very efficient in that respect. Now, the qualities that make it more perfectly competitive, we see things like a large number of firms, different companies that are out there, and very easy entry and exit, very low barriers to entry in terms of allowing people in and out of this space. Very easy for them to come and go. And a great example of the lunchtime factor is the mall. You go over there to the mall, you have lots of things to choose from. Maybe you go with friends. Everybody, one person goes to Panda Express, one to Cava, one to McDonald's, one to Chick-fil-A, and the idea is you have lots of different firms and lots of different products to choose from. So that makes it helpful. But similarly to perfectly competitive firms, we see that there is no additional profit beyond normal profit or zero economic profit, break-even status in the long run. Because firms can enter and exit, they do, and they come in and basically gobble up the remaining profits, and you end up back at long run or back run at normal economic profit or zero or break-even status. So that's very similar to perfectly competitive markets in terms of what we see there. The differentiated products aspect, you have to keep in mind that these goods aren't the same. Mr. Goodbar, very different from a Kit Kat, which is very different from Almond Joy. And firms are going to try and advertise in order to capture market share, what we call market share, a share of the market that they're trying to take here and keep as long as they can keep their customers through advertising and through sales and that sort of thing. So there is a piece to that differentiation in terms of doing that. And they're going to use non-price competition to do so. Some things that would be included here in terms of, we mentioned advertising, but also brand names. I mean, you're very familiar with the Golden Arches and the idea of the brand. That is a billion-dollar symbol in terms of seeing those golden arches. It's affiliated with McDonald's, and almost everyone on the planet knows it. That is brand name, and they've invested a lot in that brand alone. So advertising around that brand is really critical. Mr. Goodbar, the Hershey's brand there, that's in the bright yellow with the red lettering. The Nestle Crunch with the white background and the red lettering over the blue. We know what's in there. Caramello, same kind of thing with the purplish, yellow or goldish colors to symbolize more caramel. So what we see here is the brand is packaged in a way that is identifiable by any consumer that's out there. You know what an Almond Joy looks like when you see that wrapper. You know what that 100 g bar looks like when you see that wrapper. You know the good taste of caramelly goodness that's in there. And that's the idea of non-price competition. So there are product attributes that come along with that. I've kind of described some of them as we were going here talking about the packaging. Then you start to develop the flavor, right? The flavor of a 100 g bar or a Nestle Crunch with that crispy rice mixed in with the chocolate. It makes me hungry for candy bars, talking about it all day. But the idea is you have some product attributes here. Maybe it's a service that is provided, and you're crazy about in your hair salon about fanatical customer service. You want your clientele to be taken care of, so you have a coffee bar and you have biscotti that they can have with their coffee or something along those lines. That is a part of the service, the fanatical customer service that comes along with your product. That's non-price competition, but it is a differentiator in that it makes you heads above your competition in terms of what you're able to address there. Location is an important one. I mentioned the dry cleaners that's close to my house. Why is that convenient? Well, I don't have to carry around dirty laundry all day. I can also take it right from my car and put it into my closet. So the idea of location is also very important here. We talked about the places you can get to at lunch and then back to school in time for fifth period. That's also location. And people can charge for that extra location. They have a little market power there because they are closer to school. You can't get to some of the other places you could that are close to school during that lunch hour. And then that's where advertising comes in, as I mentioned, in some of these aspects, both to increase demand, changing your taste and preferences, and then making your demand more inelastic, something that I've got to have it. Wow, I see that Crunch Bar. Wow, they're doing a 2-for-1 sale, buy one, get one, or something like that. It makes the demand more inelastic than elastic, and thus I have to have it. I'm going to go out and buy one right away. So that really is the driver of that differentiation in terms of what we see here that really sets apart the monopolistically competitive environments. And we've seen all of these products at one time or another in your lifetime owned by a lot of these manufacturers. You can see the big players here, Mars, Johnson & Johnson, Hershey's not on here, but Nestle, Kraft, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, they're all in this space and they have differentiated products. And you will see even within the companies, they have differentiated products in terms of what they're driving home here. But that is by design because they're trying to appeal to particular market share of taste and preference. And what they're driving home there is all about bringing in the dollars and exercising some market power and also to increase and improve their profitability. Now let's draw some monopolistically competitive firms taking a look at this in imperfect competition. Notice that it's very similar to a monopoly. It has a downward sloping demand curve, the marginal revenue falling beneath the demand curve. And you see the ATC there. The idea of ATC is going to depend on where we produce is going to depend on where MC is, right? Because we're still going to produce to maximize profit at MC equals MR. Marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. But in this case, notice that monopolistic competition is made up of price makers. And so marginal revenue, just like a monopoly, is going to be less than demand. But with insertion of a marginal cost curve, we can see that we are producing at MC equals MR. Take that, that determines our quantity, which we take up to the demand curve, and that gets us a price at P1. Okay, so the price at P1 then is the price that we are going to sell this item for based on our quantity at MC equals MR, marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And then where this intersects with ATC is going to determine our costs, all of our costs. So this little sliver of a box that we see here is going to ultimately be our profit. Everything beneath that cost line is going to be costs in terms of our variable and fixed costs that address it. So that box is our profit. In terms of what we were able to make in perfect competition. Now we know in this market, because there are lots of buyers and sellers, when they see profit, other firms are going to come in and try and gobble up the profits. So that's going to shift demand, and we'll talk more about that. In terms of the addressing, the demand curve is going to shift. In this case, it's going to shift leftward or inward, or kind of down left or down inward, and that's going to take us to ATC on that quantity line, which is then going to take us to a break-even or normal zero economic profit status. So in the long run, new firms are coming in, firms that aren't profitable are leaving, and this is going to drive down the demand for firms that are in the market, which is going to gobble up those profits and lead us back to normal profit or zero economic profit in the long run. So what we see here is that little demand curve there moving to a point at which you can see here we were initially, and now this shift is going to take us down. Notice marginal cost and marginal revenue are going to intersect at a smaller quantity in the long run. So they're producing less, again, because of the fall in demand or the shift inward in demand. And that's going to lead to an ATC that meets demand. Now, not at its minimum, because remember, MC intersects ATC at its minimum, but this is going to intersect ATC at demand. And so the price that is established here is going to be productively efficient in that model because it is meeting, well, it's not at minimum, so I guess it's not technically productively efficient in that model. My apologies. But the idea here is it is going to meet demand is going to meet ATC there at the price. And so we are going to be zero economic profit or no economic profit in that particular model. And so your total revenue equals your total cost. You would be break even. In the long run, again, this is the long run equilibrium. So anytime we're not at demand meets ATC, something's going to happen to demand, either shift it outward or rightward, up, if you will, or leftward or inward or down in order to get back to ATC hitting demand in that respect. So again, we're going to look where MC equals MR. And then take it up to the price, which at this point equals ATC. And that's going to tell us we're in long run equilibrium. So why does demand shift in these cases? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Again, if you've got a company that's making money in this monopolistically competitive market, other people want to take advantage of that too. And so you're going to have new firms that are going to be coming in to basically also take advantage of that profit motive, that incentive to make more money. That also means there are going to be more substitutes, and they're going to take a piece of the pie, which is going to impact market share. That's going to have an impact for all of the firms that are there, even if it's just a little bit marginal in nature, but it is going to have an impact on those firms. And the demand for those for each of those firms is going to fall as a result of that. So when you have short-run losses, we're going to see the opposite happen. We're going to see firms exit the market. We're going to see a lot fewer substitutes because, again, the demand for each firm is actually going to be going up. Because you're going to be increasing market share in order to basically take what people that have left, take those clients on and take those customers. And so you're going to have more market share as a result of that. So what you're going to see here is a short run demand shift. In the short run, you're going to see that gap, that profit or loss, and you're going to see the demand shift in order to take ATC back to demand, which tells us that there is long-run equilibrium, and we're back to long run, if you will. So if there is a loss, what happens in this case? Notice ATC is above the price at which we are selling at MC equals MR, so the quantity up to the demand curve. That sets the price. This is our ATC, so this is essentially talk about profit, but it's negative profit at this point, so it really should be red, not green, sorry. But the idea here is it's not a profit, it's actually a loss. Your costs are above your revenues, so there are going to be firms that are going to leave this market in this case. And so maybe it's you, maybe it's other companies, but the idea is the demand then for the ones that remain is going to shift rightward or outward or upward in this case. And that is going to leave us back at long run with zero economic profit or break-even status. So what we see there again is the demand curve is here. It moves up or outward, kind of shifting outward there, taking us to ATC. So the idea here is, notice the Q1 is now quantity at long run. We're producing more in this market because those other firms have left. But the idea is we are break even. We are earning no profit, zero economic profit or normal profit in this condition, but we paid all our bills. All ATC is covered. So average total cost completely covered. But we are at break-even status. So, and again, a lot of businesses wish they could be at that break-even status, but that is where they are. And then price and quantity, again, would increase in this case. So your total revenue equals your total cost. And this leads us to key graph 37, which is monopolistic competition in the short run. We'll look at 36 in a second, which shows you the long run option, but I like to start with 37 because the idea here is we're looking at it in terms of a profit being made. We're producing at MC equals MR. This determines our quantity. We take this quantity line all the way up to the demand curve to establish our price at P1. This quantity line that is taken up to the demand curve for the price, then we take down to ATC, which tells us our costs. Everything in this white box we see here is our costs. Everything above that line, that cost line, up to the price is profit. So notice monopolistically competitive firms are profitable, can be profitable in the short run. And again, what we know about this is, going to our next key graph, is that those profits are going to be eaten up. So if you notice here, kind of going back and forth into these models, we're seeing demand shifting. And the idea is we are now at long run equilibrium, which is this idea that price is now meeting ATC at demand. And so MC equals MR determines our quantity. Notice in this model, what happens is the demand is shifting. So there is a bit of an increase in terms of the, or a decrease, excuse me, in terms of what each firm is producing. Because the idea is there are more firms gobbling up the profits, if you will. So demand for that is going to shift. But the idea is you're at break-even status or normal economic profit or zero economic profit in that we are back at long run. So if you see firms making a profit in MC, you'll know that they're in short run. If ATC is meeting demand at price, then you know you're in long run equilibrium, which is what we see here. Now, the opposite can happen where, as we talked about, the idea here is you have losses in the short run. This is where firms are going to leave the market. And in this case, you can see here the costs are above demand in terms of we're producing at MC equals MR. That's our quantity. Take it up to the demand curve. This is our price. And notice ATC is above that. So this is a negative profit or a loss. Firms are going to leave that market. And what that's going to do is that is going to shift the demand curve because firms are leaving that market. The demand is going to shift to ATC as a result of this. And so what we're going to see here, shift outward or rightward up to ATC. And the idea here is you're going to break even once again. So you end up back at this key graph of long run equilibrium. So you've got the profit, a negative profit or a loss in this case, and that demand shifting because firms are leaving, the demand for your product is increasing. So that's shifting outward or rightward that particular demand curve for your products, and that's leading us to long run zero economic profit or a normal profit in the long run in terms of what we see here. All right, so are monopolistically competitive firms efficient? Well, we've established monopolies aren't efficient and perfectly competitive firms are. So yeah, how does this break down? Well, we know in long run, ATC meets demand at price at that quantity established by MC equals MR. But is price at minimum ATC? Well, no. Is price at MC? Well, no. So our first initial reaction is that this is not efficient, okay? And again, not allocatively efficient because the price is not equal to MC. In this case, it is above MC. In both, it's not meeting demand at MC. So that is not allocatively efficient in terms of what we see here at MC meets demand, which is normally what we'd be looking for allocative efficiency. Also, we're not at minimum ATC, as I mentioned, which is what we would see in terms of productive efficiency because we're not at minimum ATC. So it is neither allocatively nor productively efficient and thus inefficient in this respect. So there is excess capacity as a result of what we see here. And excess capacity, by the way, is this idea we could be producing more. I mean, look at socially optimal quantity there versus what we're producing at long run. We could produce more, but we're not. Why? Because we do have some market power here. And that market power is helping us to adjust the price by adjusting the quantity that's available. So excess capacity, again, you could produce more at the lowest cost, again, a minimum ATC, but you don't have to because you have market power. Okay, so that gap is what leads to that excess capacity and that inefficiency in the market, which tells us that monopolistically competitive firms, as we anticipated when we started talking here, is inefficient. And we can see that that is the case based on productive and allocative efficiency. So in this model, we can produce at a lower cost, but we're holding back. Why? Because we have market power. We're maximizing our profit at MC equals MR. We don't need to produce at those other points we mentioned, at minimum ATC or at MC equals demand, because we have market power and we are price makers in some respect. Not totally, but not as much as monopolies would be. But we do have some market power here, and so that is the reason behind it. That excess capacity, in terms of what we could be producing, is leading to our inefficiency. Okay, so practice question. Assume there is a monopolistically competitive firm in long-run equilibrium. If the firm were to realize productive efficiency, based on the graph we just looked at, would it A, have more economic profit, B, have a loss, C, also achieve allocative efficiency, B, underproducing, or B, be in long-run equilibrium? Well, hopefully you saw it based on what we just looked at. If you produce productive efficiency at minimum ATC, you're going to lose money, right? Your demand, essentially, if you're producing here, your price is going to be here, your demand is here, and your ATC is above it. So that would tell us that we are going to have a loss. We're actually going to lose money if we were producing there, which again is why MC firms don't. They produce less because they're maximizing profit at MC equals MR. Now, which of the following statements about a monopolistically competitive firm in the long run is true? A, it has excess capacity, even though its long-run profit is zero and its output price equals its marginal cost. B, it has excess capacity and its long-run profit is positive, even though its marginal revenue equals its marginal cost. C, it has excess capacity and its output price exceeds its marginal cost, even though its long-run profit is zero. D, it has no excess capacity and its long-run profit is zero. Or E, it has no excess capacity and its marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Take a moment, pause the video if needed, answer the question, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to take a look. The answer here is C. In a monopolistically competitive firm in the long run, again, output price is going to exceed its marginal cost, even though its long-run profit is zero. And if we go back to the key graph, in taking a look at that, that's what we would see. Go back and look at your graphs. The idea here is your output price is exceeding its marginal cost, even though in the long run, you're going to have a profit of zero. And that is because you're producing at MC equals MR. And that output price is going to be above, it's going to be at demand. So it's not going to be at the marginal cost. It's going to exceed the marginal cost in terms of what we see there. It's not going to equal it. That would make A wrong. And again, the long run profit is not going to be positive. It's going to be break even, right? So B is incorrect. It does in the long run. The idea is it would have excess capacity because its long run profit is zero. So D is incorrect because it does have excess capacity, and that would make E incorrect as well. So C is the best answer here. It does have excess capacity. Its output price is above it because we produce in order to maximize profit, we produce at MC equals MR, and then we take that quantity up to the demand curve. That determines the price. That price is always going to be above marginal cost, and so even though its long-run profit is zero, the output price is still going to exceed marginal cost. Okay, some good review tools, and I'm not going to go into each one of these, but I think you'll find them helpful. You can pause the video here and take a look at them, or look at them in the chapter notes. These are some great activities, including the last one of my favorites. And then also you can take a look at another review tool for this unit, in terms of looking at perfectly competitive and imperfectly competitive markets. Again, that MC equals MR rule is going to be so important because you're going to see so many questions on the test and on the AP exam that are ultimately going to relate to that MC equals MR. One other graphical element to keep in mind is what qualities or characteristics can you include in this Venn diagram in terms of these aspects. Now, I've got one that's done for you here, which I really love. But the idea is the same in that we have a lot of different examples and characteristics to think about here in terms of different characteristics that make perfect competition what it is versus monopolistically competitive firms versus monopoly versus oligopoly. And I hope you find that helpful. Universal rules. The idea here is MR equals MC. Shutdown has not changed. Cost curves have not changed. And the idea of the incentive, the profit motive, in terms of making money has not changed either. So what we see here is a lot of the same in terms of that profit maximizing output is at MC equals MR. Shutdown would be not meeting AVC. Cost curves are the same in the upward sloping. The idea of the marginal cost curve above AVC being the supply curve, and the idea of ATC and AVC being intersected at their minimum points where MC comes in contact with them. And again, that profit motive, as I mentioned. Some key terms, not many in this chapter, but again, very similar to Monopoly in terms of graphs, but also perfectly competitive in terms of the number of players that we see here. Applying it to your business, I mean, think about it. Is your business monopolistically competitive? A great question to ask here. Do you have some market power, or is there a differentiated product that you have here? And how are you going to compete if there's other competition that may have market power in this case? Is it realistic to be able to compete with them? Small business is always tough. You ask small business owners, and especially the ones that have gone out of business, how do they compete in that environment? It is a tough environment, and it is constant work. Believe me, having worked with business owners and managers for a really long time in writing business plans for small business, it is not an easy feat. It is a tough business to be in. They slave all day long, every day, in terms of really working for trying to just break even. And it is a real struggle. They love it because it's their own business. They love it because they can, they have some decision making. But again, at the end of the day, the real power is in the customers, in the ones that come in. But they do love what they do, which is why they do it, right? Just looking at G Square, for example, Georgetown Square, what differentiated products would you sell if you were to open up here? Would you have any control over prices? What are some barriers to entry in terms of competing in this space? And what is some non-price competition that could help you address your market share? And then how would it affect the way you do business? So just some things to keep in mind as we look at monopolistically competitive environments like Georgetown Square in terms of what's happening there. And I think keeping that perspective on monopolistic competition is so important in terms of driving what business the decisions that businesses make here and why they make those decisions. The take-home quiz study packet questions are here. Here are the answers to those. Those are also on my MCPS Classroom, and I hope you find those helpful. And again, the answers with explanations are on Canvas on my MCPS Classroom as well. And then the quiz itself, the take-home quiz, the multiple choice, you should be doing on Canvas in the multiple choice section, so that way you can check your work. It'll automatically grade it and give you the answers, and then we can answer any questions you have on it in class on Friday. One activity, activity 3-16, is also in the modules section of my MCPS Classroom. A really great activity for practice to be able to look at some of these cost curves in a monopolistically competitive environment to determine what is actually going on here. And I think you'll find that helpful too. If you're having trouble trying to determine what is the price, where do we produce, what's the profit maximizing output, how do we know that we're making a profit or a loss, how do we know if we're breaking even, where should we produce for fair return versus socially efficient, all of those things are addressed in activity 3-16. Definitely one I would recommend and suggest that you take a look at here. I think you'll find it marginally beneficial. Okay. That's all the time we have for today. Again, the key graphs, you can pause and take a look at those here in terms of 36, 37, and 38 that are all monopolistic competition, either in the long run or in the short run, profit and loss in terms of what we see here. And again, those resources that I mentioned at the beginning that I think you will find helpful.